Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's Dulta Doherty, and in this podcast series, I will be speaking to investors, advisors, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world, and we'll be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. I'm speaking to a leader today of a world-class recruitment company, and his name is Ben Cockram. He's based in Dubai. He is a director of legal compliance, policy and government affairs, there's a mouthful, for Taylor Root, and covers the Middle East, Africa, Turkey, and we also had a bit of a chat about America as well. Ben's a smart guy. He's been in the industry since shortly after leaving university, and his career really took off when he moved from finance recruitment into legal recruitment. He's been in Dubai the whole time, and we had the first part of our chat, which was really just about where the industry's going, what trends we're seeing, and it was just really cool to get into that with him. Part 2 will be out later in the week. We'll jump more into the specifics of what they're up to in Dubai, what life's like there, and we will hopefully have that out probably on Friday. But in the meantime, you can enjoy this first half. I'm just back from New York, so it was intense. It was fantastic. I discussed some of it on this podcast. And yeah, if anybody's listening who we met over there, just thanks so much for entertaining us and having time for us to come and video with you and sharing your story with us. We had an absolute blast, and I take my hat off to anybody who does well over there, because you have to work hard, and it's not a place you go and think you're going to cruise to making money. They're all at it hard, they're doing well, and it's the place to go if you're ambitious. So super impressed by everybody we met, but I'll have a bit more on that later. Over to Ben.
Hello.
Ben Cockram, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
All right, I'm just over a little jet lag back from New York City. So
it's a killer. How long were you there for?
So we flew in on Wednesday night, got up 6 a.m. and just grinded out 9 podcasts in 2 days. Had a couple of beers with the guys at Oliver James to finish off, and then got the flight out on Saturday again. So
that is exemplary work ethic.
Tell you what.
God, mate, I don't know if I could do that. I think since having kids, my energy levels have just shot through the floor.
It was our first time away from the kids together. Charlotte's my business partner and wife, so that was interesting, so it was good to kind of have that wee bit of a break from them, to be honest. And we flew in. Charlotte had found a videographer on LinkedIn who's a student, and then we brought a load of equipment with us for the podcast, and she brought the video stuff, and we just went from WeWork to WeWork. It was fantastic, So
amazing. That's really cool. And obviously nice to get away from the kids. How many have you got?
2 under 2. And yourself?
Oh, mate, that is not good. I've got a 3-year-old and a 12-month-old, so not a million miles away from you. But I just feel like we're constantly at war with one or both. But what are you going to do? They're wonderful, and all of those cliches.
Yeah. So, right, we're here to talk about recruitment, right? So, You've been doing this for a little while. You're not a tremendously old chap, are you? You've, I think we went to university around the same time.
It depends what your conception of being elderly is. Look, I'm 35.
Yeah, you're my age.
So
yeah.
I think, yeah. We must have graduated at very similar times. And as with most people, I fell into recruitment and sort of moved instantly. My first recruitment role was in Dubai back in 2007. Back in the good old days when it was like the Wild West, and I had probably about, I don't know, 18 months of it just being like a sort of money printing factory. And then the global recession hit, and then it was not so much fun. But I think at that point, the options I had were, do I try and go back to the UK, get a job and, survive like everybody else, or do I try and do the same thing in Dubai, and carve out a bit of a niche? And I opted to stay. And I've been here 12 years now,
Wow.
which is a hell of a lot longer than anticipated.
That's
my hair's grayer.
That's a big decision. That's a big decision to stick it out in a recession away from home. Like, were you close to going back? Or were you close to moving on somewhere else?
Well, interestingly, I got offered an in-house recruitment role with a big sportswear multinational, and that was to relocate to Germany. And the sole reason I didn't take that was completely serendipitous, and it was just that I met my future wife, and decided I would give that a go and stick around in Dubai. But in terms of the choice itself, I didn't really have much of a choice. It was a really, really shitty market, and I just had to get into a position to figure out which companies were actually going to spend money on recruiters and which weren't. And at that point, I did a lot of work with government and semi-government vehicles in Abu Dhabi and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, because these were the individuals with the deeper pockets. And I did almost nothing with multinationals until probably 2012, when I actually moved into legal recruitment again. And then since then, it's been kind of pure multinational with a smattering of government and sovereign wealth stuff here and there.
You had a choppy enough start to your career. If I was to have a look at it, from when we recruit people, you kind of went. You had the recession. You were at another firm. You're at another firm. What was it that? When did your career really start to take off? Obviously, you're really successful right now, but was there a point when you got really good at this, or was it a coming together of lots of different things?
Good question. Look, I think the short answer is I definitely sort of professionalized when I moved into legal recruitment. And that probably coincided with me getting married,
drinking less,
drinking less, being more sensible with my cash, not spending absolutely everything I earned, and probably not chasing immediate fees. I mean, the biggest learning curve I've gone through, and I think the most important thing I realized, was that if you play a medium to long-term game in recruitment, the money will come. So you need to sort of stop focusing on the money in a way and focus more on the kind of raw basics. And I think when that twigged in my head, and it wasn't until I moved into legal recruitment that happened, suddenly things started to feel a little bit easier. So I think 2012 was when I feel like my career really started. Up until that point, it was about learning the bare bones of the industry and realizing what not to do based on all the ridiculous mistakes I made.
Good. And it's interesting you said that about the strategic piece. We're not in a business that allows us to be strategic. It's immediacy, especially when you're on the ground floor. You have to survive, you have to build, you have to do that. It's interesting. Like, how did you find, how did you like have the confidence to, and what does that actually mean, that you were able to like develop things that were fostering over the long term as opposed to the short term?
Good question. Look, bloody hard work, of course. But I think realizing of marketing yourself internally as well as externally. We all have to make money. It doesn't matter if you're a year into this game or you're 15 years into the game. Most of us are still revenue generating consultants. And I think the thing I found was if you make money, it's easy for you to then ask for things that you think will make you more money down the line. So I've been very fortunate in my last two roles that I've traveled a lot. But the only reason why I've been afforded that opportunity is because I essentially asked to do it, and was able to kind of demonstrate, if not immediate revenue, then some down the track revenue thereafter. So it's partly about backing yourself, but then, you know, making sure you make the people who make the decisions aware that you're capable, but you have to be able to show them that you're capable. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg.
That is it's interesting, like, because, and I asked the question because in New York, two questions came about. They said, why are you videoing all of this? Why are you doing it all for free? You know, and like, what's in it for you? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like, naturally I would think, okay, I want to align myself with the best brands out there and social proof that this is what we do, this is how we do it, and I want to be able to give back and share your story. But also, I'm guaranteed to get something out of that based on that, because it's a long play. But everybody, I had to almost explain that, because in the cut and thrust of New York, everybody is just trying to kill what's in front of them all day, every day. And I find our industry can lack a bit of foresight when it comes to the strategic piece.
Oh, absolutely. We're an industry of short-termists, and that's probably why lots of people are successful as well. You know, if you can be laser focused on the thing that's in front of you that's going to make you money, you're probably going to make money. The question is, are you going to then last in that industry over the long term? And I think, you know, something that you're doing extremely well, and this is only based on what I see on LinkedIn and, you know, the things that you share and the podcasts that you've done, is you're building a brand, which I think is doubly difficult for you, because, you know, the recruitment industry in itself doesn't have the best reputation at times. And I think rec to recs, even more acutely suffer from, you know, being tarred with the same brush. So, you know, you're very clearly kind of setting yourself apart. And I think, you know, those should apply to our industry, and to the way that people approach their markets.
It's very hard, either as an internal recruiter or as an agency recruiter or as a rec to rec, to get a seat at the table properly when you're discussing things with clients and not be seen as purely transactional. And you have to sacrifice a lot of short-termism in the way you go about things. But I think I'm probably just lucky that I'm not tremendously interested in cold calling. I generally enjoy marketing. I kind of studied that at uni, and I eventually kind of just aligned it to this. And I guarantee you everybody will be doing this type of stuff in 18 months' time. So hopefully we've just got a wee bit of a jump on things. But
you definitely have. And I think you've realized perhaps one of the most important lessons that, you know, have sort of has sunk into my brain over the past 12 years is that cold calling is not how you win business. You know, the long-term approach, the building relationships with people, the building credibility, that's what gets you a seat at the table. And using, you know, New York as an example, by virtue of the fact that all these people are saying, why on earth are you doing this for free? They've already bought into you, because you're saying, well, look, you know, this is free, but something's going to come off the back of it, because, you know, you're going to take me a bit more seriously.
Yeah. And look, at some stage, I'll find somebody that will charge you for, and, you know, you're going and you're going to get some people direct from this. So if we can align each other's goals together, then everybody's a winner. I think in the future, though, we'll be able to work better off the data. So we'll be able to be like, here's the post. Okay, let's work out who exactly has viewed it. And then we'll put that into a funnel, and then we'll have a whole targeting process, and then we'll get way more out of it. But we are nowhere near figuring that out right now. So right now we're just, let's go on a content creation bonanza and see where it takes us. and hopefully we get a few wins to stay in business at the same time.
Oh, you will do. You'll just drive people your way, both clients and candidates. And I think, you know, your point on technology, I mean, that's coming down the track. AI, it will, you know, despite what people say, will massively change our industry. I don't think necessarily for the bad, though. I think it will just refine things. Yeah, I mean, that's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. Just, you know, the impact of AI.
What do you think it's going to do?
How it's I think it's going to make individuals with a good, strong ability to build relationships, i.e. people with EQ, it's going to make those skills even more important, because some of the more transactional elements of what we do, i.e. the advertising, the candidate sourcing, i.e., accumulating raw data, will largely be done by, machines that are very good at doing these sorts of things and very quick. Now, a lot of that is dependent on the data set, i.e., what is being fed into these computers. But where a human being's role becomes super, super important is interpreting that data, and sort of, really, really focusing on the human element. Even if you've got 10 CVs that a software program has found that fits a spec, you still don't know if those 10 people are actually any good for the job and the culture, because the computer can't. So I just think it will refine our industry. I don't think it will revolutionize it, because it's still about human to human contact, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't even guess what's going to come around the corner, but the brand piece is going to be really interesting, because obviously if everything's going to be automated and everybody's got the same tools, then you want something that will stand out. So when all this automation's happening, whether it's messaging sequencing or whatever it is, that when you're hitting them, they'll recognize the story of what you're showing. And I also think, at its essence, it's going to go back to proper storytelling.
Yeah.
That's the oldest thing that's ever existed, and it's something that from the start of recruitment to now, there's been a bit of a gap, and we've forgotten how to sell that story of the journey of the client and what it means. And now it'll go 360. I think it'll be all about joint branding with clients, and then working it from there, because I think you need the social proof now. People don't like, if you ever hear, like I'm in some groups, and you hear developers, they just like, no, I need to know the name of the client, I need to know this, I need to know that, don't waste my time with stuff. People aren't as patient for recruiters as they used to be. So how do we negate that is kind of stuff that I think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've hit on such an important thing there, which is, the narrative is absolutely everything when it comes to, selling to a client, or selling a client to a candidate, or even when a candidate goes into an interview. I work with lawyers who are, again, generally a cerebral bunch, and quite, some of them can be quite introverted, or incredibly egotistical. So there's a real divide between the individuals who interview well and those who don't. And the ones that do are the ones that understand that you have to go in and give the interviewer your narrative, your story, because that's what makes you buy into people. We've been telling stories for thousands and thousands of years for a reason, because it's a way that people engage.
Yeah, I completely agree. Tell me, when did your job get interesting?
Okay. Look, I think for me, my job got interesting when I realized that, I can transact and I can recruit, and I think I'm reasonably good at finding good candidates, but I'm better at going out and winning business and building relationships. So I think when I'd convinced the powers that be in my last company, that I was capable of doing that, I was given slightly more free rein to travel internationally and tap into, what we call, so places like Switzerland, the Netherlands, the US, where a lot of the roles that we're instructed on are driven out from, and just realizing that being face to face with somebody is a way more effective way than sending an email or picking the phone up on a sort of cold call basis. That's where it got really interesting for me, because you start to get a much bigger global picture, and realize that everything is very connected and much smaller than it seems.
And how does that work from a business development standpoint? If you're market mapping, are there legal recruitment firms that spread into multiple different markets? Are you able to tap into one client across 6 markets, and then you're kind of work out who their competitors are and work down from that? Or like, how did that journey kind of progress for you?
That's a really good question. Okay, so I guess there's two tranches to touch on there. There's the client side and the competitor. From a competition perspective, we're in a very, very good position as a business because we are probably the largest legal recruiter in the world, pound for pound, certainly outside of North America. And we have a strong brand. But like every single recruitment company I've ever worked for and will probably ever work for in the future, we are not always great at tying together the relationships we have from office to office. They can be quite siloed. And I think kind of realizing and acknowledging that has allowed us to get into a position where we're utilizing global data to make sure that we're tying these relationships together. So I guess as an example, let's just say we worked with Coca-Cola in our Singapore office, but we'd never done anything with them in any other market. It was about then reaching out to the contacts we had in Singapore and asking them very nicely, based on the good relationship we had with them, if they would be willing to make introductions to their counterparts in other offices where we also had a presence. And that really turned things over for us. So, from a competition perspective, there's another firm called Major Lindsay Africa, who are huge in the US. They have something like 300 consultants, and have also now got quite a strong presence in Europe and Asia, run by a couple of old colleagues of mine. And I think they're a very, very good business. But that aside, it starts to get a bit more fragmented from there, especially in the US, where it tends to be 1- and 2-man bands.
Is that because legal recruitment is more relationship driven than most industries?
Look, I couldn't say with any certainty that that's the case because I've only ever done sort of senior finance prior to this, and I felt that the dynamics of how you win business were fairly similar. What has often been the case in the US in the past, though, is that multinationals will work with one company again and again and again, and it's difficult to sort of break that stranglehold. So yeah, in which case I suppose it is relationship driven. In other markets, it tends to be more focused on luck, proximity, cost as well. There's a huge focus on saving money right now with our clients. Our biggest competitor at the moment is LinkedIn. And it's almost like being in an abusive relationship because we rely on LinkedIn massively. It's a huge source of candidates for us and also intelligence. But the flip side is our clients are using LinkedIn and saying, well, hang on, it's way cheaper for us to just whack an ad up and cross our fingers and try and filter through the 3 million candidate applications that we get. And look, there are loads of arguments for that side of things, but cost is becoming a huge factor these days, and we have to try and be as competitive as we can be whilst retaining our own commercial interests.
It must be an interesting position running LinkedIn, slowly seeing that you're eating the people who are feeding you every year.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, eh? I mean, I got some really interesting stats from LinkedIn. I just wrote an article about this recently. So if you fancy, falling asleep really quickly this evening, you can try reading it. But it was generally about the percentage of applicants per role that are relevant, and so on and so forth. And this is the same data that they're sharing with multinationals. So I just wonder whether they're sort of saying, hey, use us and pay for these ads, but you should also use the other guys that we're charging hundreds of thousands of dollars to for, LinkedIn recruiter accounts, because they're quite useful too. So I think it's a multifaceted approach that people should take. LinkedIn's a really great tool. People should definitely use it. But there is a place in this world for souls like us as well.
I've spoken to, through the podcast, on air and off air, some of the best sourcing minds out there, and a common theme's coming across. They just said to me, map out your data and get it off LinkedIn, and create your own talent pool, and then manage your own talent pool from there. Because what we're seeing is only going to increase. Because when you think of it, how are we supposed to compete with somebody who has all the data in 4 years' time, in 5 years' time? It's a frightening prospect.
Yeah, I agree. I agree to an extent, but in my eyes, as pretty as the interface looks on LinkedIn, it's still raw data. Where we as recruiters and as search firms will make our money in the next 5 to 10 years is in how that data is interpreted and our understanding of things. Before a company has wasted time interviewing 5 people who aren't suited to the role just because their paper CV looks good. This brings it all back to kind of that narrative piece and the relationship piece. And I think, our ability to understand the people that we work with is essentially what our clients pay us for. But in my eyes, if you're paying us to send you CVs, then you should go somewhere else and pay less money for it, because that's not where our value add is.
Also, I think we can be a little bit morbid almost when you start looking at the future in general with AI, with like the jobs that you actually recruit for now, legal jobs, like a lot of them could disappear with automation. So I try and not focus too much in on it and think, like, what can we do in the next 15 years? Like, how much can we get out of this? And if we do all become software salespeople in the future, fair enough. But let's make hay while the sun shines,
Massive thank you to Ben for coming on the podcast. We'll have him on again very soon to get part 2 out of it. Lots of stuff I'd love to ask him. I love that he's been in the game for 17 years. He's still really passionate about going out there and building the business. A lot of people who join big companies and get to his level can be glorified administrators. He's anything but. And that's what fascinates me about interviewing him. So really want to get into all that detail and figure out what his drivers are, what works for him, what it's like to win business in all these different countries, and building really a global brand where he's still hands-on. So fascinating guest. Can't wait to get into the detail. And look, I know we spoke a little bit about my New York trip. I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Loads of insights into the market over there, and it's just so full on. Like, if you're young and hungry, you couldn't go anywhere else. Like, it's the place to go. So, but more on that later, and more on Ben.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.